Good morning, everybody, and welcome to KZN Top Business and KZN MasterClass. Today, we've got two very, very important people. We like to call them gurus in their area of expertise. We've got Rose and Adrian from Pro Talent. So, Rose, introduce yourself and tell us all about yourself.
Thanks, Grant. Good morning, everybody. I am Rose Govender. I am the recruitment manager and specialist recruiter at Pro Talent Recruitment. I've got about 10 years of HR generalist management experience, and for the last 4 or 5 years, I've specialized in recruitment. I'd like to believe that I'm in my dream job of placing people into their dream jobs. I don't know if that works as an introduction, Grant.
So that's incredible. So we're going to come back to you just now, and Adrian, fill us in.
Yeah, morning, Grant, morning, everybody. My name is Adrian, and I'm the specialist IT recruiter at Pro Talent Recruitment. Been with the business for just under 5 years, but I've been in recruitment and HR for about 15 years or so now. Yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it, just like Rose. We get to be in our dream jobs.
All right. So now what we're going to do today, folks, and everybody at home, is recruitment jobs. What we're doing here is one of the most critical things that has happened since COVID, and even prior COVID. Is it? So what we're going to do is I'm going to give it to Rose and Adrian just to explain just a little bit what's happened in the marketplace, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, because it's damn important. So things have evolved, and the two of you, I think, are in the best position to actually fill us in and where it is. So it's back to you. I'll come in later on and put the pieces together, but in the meantime, it's your show.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, so I think this topic of recruitment and retaining your top talent is an important one, because it's often said that people are the most important asset in an organization. Yet we've seen they can also be the most difficult asset to manage. So our hope from a talk like this, or from tackling a topic like this, is to help business owners or businesses or HR practitioners better recruit and retain their staff. We've seen a lot that has happened, especially in the last 3 years, post-COVID, looting, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's important for us to educate business owners on the trends that are currently, or the current trends, and just how we can do things better as people. I think for me, it's important to ask yourself a few questions before we start. And the questions that I think are important is to ask yourself, have you noticed changes in the caliber of candidates that you've interviewed in the last, let's say, 2 years? I think if we all think about that question, we'd realize that there's definitely a marked difference in people in the last few years. Another important question is, have you hired the wrong person? How did it impact your business or company? I think every one of us can think back to that person, and it can actually give you goosebumps to think what impact they had on your business or on the company itself. Another important question is, have you lost a great candidate to another employer for whatever reason? Your recruitment process, or the candidate was that great that they had 2 or 3 offers at the same time, and unfortunately you couldn't match something that they received. All of these questions are things that a lot of business owners or HR practitioners or managers are struggling with at the moment, and trying to make sense of, to hire better and to retain their staff. Recruitment is one of the most important but difficult parts of the jobs that everyone here would have, because it can also be very unpredictable. But I think we've learned as recruitment specialists that if you make the right hire, it can be very, very rewarding. So really, I want to commend the people that are on this seminar or webinar for the difficult job that you have, because it's quite a massive responsibility to try and find the right people for your business. Or and often this task forms part of what we do and is overlooked in terms of its importance. So I just wanted to start by looking at a few stats just for us to ponder on, as I go through the content. If you look at the slide, we can see that 96% of employees cite empathy as the most important factor in employee retention. And we've seen this more and more, as we consult with higher level candidates or mid to senior level candidates. They want to feel heard, They want to feel valued. They want to feel equally treated, all of those types of things. So I think this is important to understand that the majority of your organization in terms of people is looking for empathy as one of the things that they cite is important to them. 75% of employees quit their jobs because of their bosses. Frightening stat if you are a business owner, but I think it must make you question your engagement with your staff and think about what would they be saying about you. 37% of employees feel job recognition boosts their productivity. I must say, as a manager and as an HR manager previously, I've seen this in the sense that when you recognize people that go the extra mile, they are inclined to just perform better, and they're inclined to go the extra mile, in the future as well. 63.3% of companies say that retaining employees is harder than hiring them. And Adrian's going to touch a bit more about this later on. Only 25% of businesses have an active engagement strategy for their employees. So that tells you only 25% of businesses think that this is important to have as part of their company strategy or as part of retaining their employees. There's a few topics that I'll be tackling, and there's topics that Adrian will be tackling. So just so that we tackle as much as we can in this type of platform to give you as much information as we can. And the first thing that I'm going to be talking about is how to avoid hiring the wrong people. There's a lot that can be said about this, and we will be talking a lot from our experience, because I think when it comes to understanding what people want, understanding what our clients want, I'd like to believe we are, let's say frontline workers, if you want to call it, to be able to advise on this type of thing. So the first thing that I want to touch on is spending time refining the job description. I can't tell you how many times we see this where a client will send us a job description and say, I'm looking for an accountant. And the job description is an old one. It is one that they used for their previous accountant, and they haven't taken the time to revise it, to spend time refining it. They just send you an old job description and say to you, you need to use this to hire the person. There could have been lots of things that could have happened from the time that this person resigned, from the time this accountant resigned. There could have been a breakdown in processes. There could be bottlenecks that have been identified when doing an exit interview with this, let's say, accountant per se. There could be issues with the system, with the team, with the facilities. There could just be a workload issue where you might have to refine this job description, take out some of it, because maybe the person left because they felt overworked. So I think, as a recruiter, it's important that you would look at your job description and make sure that you sit with the team and that, there's buy-in and that everybody agrees this is the job description for the new recruit that's going to come into the team. For me, a job description must include key characteristics required for the job. In certain jobs, negotiation skills is critical. In some jobs, accuracy is critical. These things are important to define and to add to the job description. It is said that a job description must be concise, it must be to the point, but I believe there are certain things that you should not leave out. This can include working hours, benefits, weekend work, overtime requirements. I had an offer for a candidate and he declined the offer because the contract of employment said overtime or weekend work is a requirement or is mandatory, and that was never discussed with him in the interview, and it wasn't on the job description to start with. So it would have wasted everyone's time. Is there a vehicle required for the position? I think these are things that are important to add onto the job description. Another thing that I'm seeing a lot with our clients is that they want to group unrelated jobs together. Now, HR and management would be given this mandate to save costs, which we all understand. But sometimes you'll get a request for an accountant that can also be a sales manager that can train staff in the company. Now, an accountant is not a salesperson. They don't have the same skills or character, to be doing sales. And also, how good is your accountant on training, like training the staff? That's a training manager. That's part of HR. So a lot of the time we have companies that group unrelated jobs together, and then they wonder why the person hasn't worked out in the position. It's often because they pulled in too many different directions and expected to do too many jobs at the same time. So just be aware of this, that when you're looking at a job description, make sure that it is a realistic workload and number of functions for an employee. The next thing I want to touch on is, having a relationship with the recruitment consultant. So I am aware that not everyone here will use a recruiter to recruit for them. You would sometimes advertise and do the entire process on your own, which is fine. But if you are using a recruitment agency or a recruiter, make sure that you have a conversation with the recruiter. Tell them exactly what you're looking for. Sometimes we find our clients don't tell us exactly what they're looking for, and this wastes time in the entire process, which in itself is a long process to start with. So know your negotiables and non-negotiables for the position. Preparing before an interview is very important. A lot of the time, and I'm sure that some of you will be able to remember doing this at some point. Just before the candidate can come through for the interview, they're sitting at reception, you quickly print out the CV and then you're running into the interview. And obviously it's no fault of anyone, we all are busy. But if you take the time to prepare before an interview, prepare questions, notes, highlight discussion points, look at the CV, see where there are red flags, you'd be able to have a better quality, of interview with the candidate, and you'll be able to maximize the time that you have for them for the duration of the interview. They've come all the way, they've made the effort. Best you get as much information out of them as possible. Be self-aware as well. If you're a key decision maker in the recruitment process, it's important to understand that we are critical in our own way. We have natural tendencies when meeting new people. So ask yourself the question, am I an overly enthusiastic person or overly optimistic? I find that about myself. I'm a very optimistic person, so I will sometimes force the candidate to be optimistic, and I've realized that about myself. So I think just being aware of who we are. Do we always see the best in people? Are we slightly guarded and take time to warm up in an interview? Remember, as the person interviewing, you set the tone for the interview. So you need to also be aware of that. Do we lean towards people that are more like us? How many of us do that? I think these are questions that we can ask ourselves, when we interviewing as well. The next topic that I want to chat or talk about is signs of a bad candidate. So, I find a lot of us ignore warning signs, and it's simply because the candidate ticks all the boxes when it comes to the technical skill that's required for the position. So what do? We hire the person and then we realize they have come into the organization and caused chaos. So what are some of the examples or signs of a bad candidate that we should not ignore? Candidates who don't ask questions. If they don't ask questions, it shows a lack of interest. It shows maybe a weakness on their side, maybe fear. So be careful of candidates that have no questions, because the questions that they ask will help you also determine how they think. They avoid discussing any flaws. Refusing to acknowledge weaknesses could be a lack of humility or self-awareness. We often get this question from our candidates. I don't know how to answer that question of what are your weaknesses. Bear in mind, this is a daunting question, because let's face it, everything you say can and will be held against you. But I think that if a candidate is overconfident that they have no weaknesses or no flaws, then it's something that you should be aware of. They arrive late for an interview. So, while there are legitimate reasons to be late, it can often indicate disorganization or lack of respect, because we tell our candidates when we prepare them for an interview, arrive at least 15 to 20 minutes early. They are unprepared for the interview. A good candidate will understand the position, make sure that they receive a job description. They will at least know the basics of the company, which means they'll do research on the company. If they're unprepared for the interview, that should have alarm bells ringing for you. They don't seem adaptable. If you mention additional job responsibilities, they object, and this can tell you that they don't adapt to change. So be careful of that. My advice is to ask behavior-based interview questions in an interview. It's called the STAR-based method, and this will tell you if a candidate, or tell you how a candidate will react in a situation. So maybe go and do some research on behavior-based interviews, because it will tell you what action they'll take. It will tell you what results they will see as the outcome of the actions that they've taken when you ask a specific scenario type question. This can often separate average candidates from high achievers, because if you ask a behavior type question or behavior-based question and a candidate can't answer, then it means they're not thinking about, or they're not thinking clearly or making an effort to think about what would happen in that type of scenario. When you're looking for a candidate, look for both technical and cultural fit. So, like I just mentioned, they can tick all the boxes with regards to the technical skills required for the role, but they can cause chaos in the environment. And what happens is this impacts your top performers. So you need to judge, or you need to weigh rather, is it worth them coming into your organization and upsetting the people that have been there for the longest and have added massive value to the company? I would encourage you to get to know the candidate personally. It's important to ask questions about their family, their interests, their hobbies, just understanding their background, because what if you need an extrovert for the position and the person is a complete introvert? Their hobbies will tell you the type of person they are. Their interests will tell you, what they do in their spare time, and be able to help you find the best fit for the company, for the position that you're looking for. Something else that I do now, and it's, for me, it's mandatory, is I ask the question of, is there anything that you need to tell me that will affect your ability to do the job? It could be health, it could be family, personal circumstances. Obviously, you can't write out, ask certain questions, but this type of question where it can affect the ability to do the job is important to ask, because I've found a lot of people will tell you about their health situation, or that they've got some personal situation that has affected them in the past, and then you are equipped to make the decision as to whether this can be tolerated in your company or not. Adrian will touch on this later, but psychometric assessments is a valuable tool when making a hiring decision. It must not be what you use, totally to make the decision. It must be used in conjunction with your interview process, but it will also highlight red flags or areas of concern that you can look at in order to make the decision as to whether the person is the right person for the organization. Just to continue on signs of a bad candidate, some of the red flags that we've seen recently that you can look out for. When a candidate tells you, I can leave immediately, especially if they've been employed for the last 3 to 4 years in their current environment, it tells you a few things. It tells you their relationship with their current company and manager. It tells you how little regard they have for the company that they work for, and that they can just leave immediately and not think about a replacement that would need to come in. And it tells you a bit about their character, that they think it's okay to do that and that they're telling you this in an interview. Another thing we see, which is like a behavior pattern in candidates, is every environment they work for, every company they work for was a toxic company, was a toxic environment. I would dig deeper there. I would ask them, why do you consider that a toxic environment? What do you mean by that? Because I don't want to put you in another environment that's similar. And that's where you'll start to uncover what they believe is a toxic environment. And that's when you'll be able to ask yourself, is this a toxic candidate? So I think that, for me, is an important one. Another trend I'm seeing is when a candidate says, I would prefer not to discuss. So my response to that usually is, then I actually cannot represent you to my client, because for me, transparency is important, and it should be for you that's making this hiring decision. You cannot employ somebody that's preferring not to discuss anything to do with their employment with you. Bad mouthing the current or previous employer, that goes without saying. If somebody's telling you how horrible their boss is, chances are they're going to say the same about you when they're ready to leave your organization. I mean, any good candidate will be able to practice restraint when discussing their current environment, regardless of how bad the situation is. Another thing to look out for is mutual separation agreements. We're seeing a lot of this, and usually there's a negative connotation where something's happened and the company, as an example, preferred to not go the disciplinary route and just sat down with the employee and they did a mutual separation and the employee left. Ask for documents. At the end of the day, if it's to do with employment, you can ask for any document, because you are the potential employer and you are needing to make a decision and satisfy any questions that you have around the employee with regards to anything that they are stating to you or that's on their CV. Ask for clarity when a candidate has been retrenched. So what we learned is that COVID 2.5 years ago or so has given companies an opportunity to get rid of their, let's say, dead weight or non-performers. So gone are the days where a person that has been retrenched has just been retrenched for the fact that the company is downsizing or operational requirements. Some of the time they are retrenched because they were identified as the low performers, and this was an opportunity for the company to terminate employment with them. So ask questions, ask what method was taken, how many people were retrenched, how were you treated in the retrenchment process? These types of questions will help you understand exactly why the candidate was retrenched. Check references. Again, as recruiters, we see that candidates will give you their cousin, uncle, best friend, whoever as a reference. Ways to check that is to check the person's LinkedIn profile to make sure that they actually do work in the company as that or in that position, because a lot of the time candidates will give you their colleagues as a reference, and it needs to be their manager or the person they're reporting into. You can also call the company and validate the references details, make sure that the person is working for the company in the capacity of a plant manager, let's say. So that for me is important, and that's something we do just to make sure that we are contacting the right person with regards to references. And another thing we find with regards to references, and Adrian will agree with me of recent, is that because there's an agreement between the employee and the employer that the employer will not give a bad reference, you'll notice they're a little bit unclear or vague in the reference of the employee. I would encourage you to ask lots more questions and suss out exactly what the person is trying to tell you about the person that you are potentially wanting to hire for your company. Reasons for leaving. A candidate must have valid reasons for leaving, career progression or relocation or whatever the case may be. But when you see on a CV that a person's reason for leaving is better prospects or no room for growth, and then there's no job thereafter, so they didn't work for 2 years and then they went to the next job, that's questionable because they left a job without having a job. What has happened there? Often you'll find there gaps on the CVs, and gaps need to have reasonable explanations. I mean, the person could have been in jail for all you knew for 2 years, and I'm just kidding, but I'm saying anything could have happened. And there are reasonable explanations for gaps on CVs, like some women decide to be stay-at-home moms for a season, or family responsibility because a parent was ill, or whatever the case may be. But it's important for you to ask for reasons when there are gaps on CVs, because it could be there for any reason. I think it's important for a candidate to be engaged and have a good attitude in your interview. So attitude is something we'll pick up straight away. Are they positive? Do they seem enthusiastic? Are they engaging? And these are things to look out for when interviewing candidates. With regards to a payslip or earnings, we find that candidates can exaggerate what they are earning or simply not understand what their payslip means. So it could be either. It could be they're understating or they're overstating what they're earning simply because they don't understand a payslip, or they're trying to get a higher salary. So, as your process or our process includes that we request a payslip. So if a CV comes from us, we would have validated those earnings by looking at their payslip. You should request the same. At the end of the day, looking and analyzing a payslip can be the difference between a candidate accepting or rejecting an offer just because they didn't understand their payslip, as an example. I think it's important to remember that candidates prepare well for an interview. There's so much of information out there to help them to prepare and present the best versions of themselves. And some of them are very good at selling themselves, but prove to be lazy and problematic once they are hired. So just as they prepare, so should we as HR managers or business owners. I went for a conference recently, and I listened to a very interesting analogy about shot glasses versus jugs. So Nathan Austin was the speaker, and he said he's seeing a trend recently where a lot of business owners or HR managers or companies in general are hiring a shot glass and expecting them to have the same capacity or ability to perform as a jug. So ask yourself the question for your company as a business owner, as an HR professional. Is this what you're doing? Are you hiring a shot glass and expecting them to perform as a jug? Because if you are, they're not going to. Chances are they're not going to work out because they have that much capacity and you're expecting them to perform that much. Something that's very important to remember in and through your recruitment process. So you've done all of this. You've looked out for all the red flags. You've done the best that you could do. You've been thorough in in your recruitment process, and then you still hire the wrong person, because guess what, people are people and we don't always make the right decision. What do you do then? There's definitely things that you can do throughout your probationary period. Adrian is going to touch on that, but if you're picking up warning signs very early, manage them properly throughout your probationary period. This means getting your HR manager, your IR manager, or your labor consultant involved right from the beginning to the end, so that you follow process if you foresee that you're going to be ending your employment with them. I think that, or my appeal to business owners or companies is to be realistic and manage your expectations when you hire a new person. I'll use myself as an example. I started at Pro Talent on the 1st of March, 2020. You can imagine the horror, because 14 days later, the entire country shut down, and worst position to be in because no one's hiring. I think if I didn't have the support of Cindy Norcott and the team that I work in at that point, it could have been it was a very daunting point in my life, because you start in a new company having been quite settled in the previous company, and you take this leap of faith to start a new job, and then you have this type of situation to deal with. It's very, obviously it's dramatic and it's not a common occurrence, but I just want to put you in the mind of a person when they start a new job and how that could feel for them. So my advice to you, or my appeal to you, is to know that even the best candidates cannot be expected to add value straight away, regardless of the position they're in. They'll need to learn the business processes, the business products, the systems, the people, before they start being impactful and contribute the way that you are expecting, or the way that they've sold themselves in the interview. Sometimes that could take between 3 to 6 months, sometimes even longer. I find that the more time people take to learn the organization and the processes, the better they are in the long run in a company. So we all know that there are definite costs to hiring the wrong employee, and the few that I think everybody knows quite well is the cost of hire. If you look at the cost of hire, from advertising costs to dealing with the recruiter, or to the time that it takes to screen the CVs, interview, the cost per hour for your HR person, the time, energy, resources, all of that needs to be taken into account, when looking at what a bad hire can cost you as a company. The next thing is the cost of training. So obviously when you take on a newbie, manpower and resources need to be allocated to training. Considering these costs, the human resource departments are usually under a lot of pressure to find the right candidate, because otherwise you training all year, every year, and no company wants to do that over and over again. Productivity loss from the time the person leaves to the time the new person starts. Everybody needs to sort of take on additional work, manage the process till the new person's settled in. Motivation loss. When someone leaves, obviously they would have had relationships with the people in the company, and that would affect people around them. Sometimes high performers can lose faith in the employer's management because of not finding the right person and constant recruitment in a position. It sometimes can affect staff where they feel demotivated or their morale is affected. So just all-around motivation in terms of your workforce. Reputational loss. I mean, we know that, or we'll tell you that is before a candidate can come through for an interview, the first thing they do is look at your Google reviews, look at what Facebook is saying about you, what your employees are saying about you. In the age of social media today, it's very easy for candidates to assess if you are a professional organization and that if you've got a good work culture. And I think constantly hiring the wrong employees can have lasting impressions on the company, and have a significant amount of monetary and reputational loss in general. So I just want to talk on a few trends that we're seeing, and I want to quickly go through this. Trends post-COVID, which is obviously the last 2.5 years or so. Many companies are automating their recruitment process. So this is important for you to know, in the sense that a lot of our clients are requesting intro videos for candidates. So before they even see the candidate, they want the candidate to present a 1-minute intro video just to see if they want to shortlist the candidate. This is a good thing because it eliminates inconvenience of arranging a few interviews with the candidate, because you get to do this as your first process. Then there's pre-screening questionnaires that are online, there's assessments, there's personality tests. All of this, again, just reduce the amount of times that the candidate needs to physically come into your organization. Location no longer limits the talent pool. There's a massive increase in remote positions. It's, for us as a recruitment agency, we've been overwhelmed by the number of clients that we have in the USA, Australia, UK that want South Africans to work for them remotely in our own country. What happens is they send the tech and they support them from the countries that they are in, but they really are, this increases competition for our South African clients, because now you can work from home, you can work in the comfort of your home. The hours sometimes are better for certain candidates, and yeah, and a lot of them are taking up these opportunities and doing really well in them. We're seeing that physical perks can't replace real company culture. Company reputation becomes key in hiring. Check your Google reviews. My suggestion is that you incentivize your staff to review the company, because obviously the more reviews that are positive that you have, the better it is for you if anyone's reviewing your company on Google or looking at your company on Google. Many companies have adopted a hybrid work model to allow flexibility and work-life balance. This seems to be very attractive to candidates because they want to have, lots of professionals are rethinking their purpose after the pandemic. Adrian will tell you we've seen a massive increase in digital marketing, e-commerce, and IT roles after the pandemic. You know, a lot of companies, or a lot of my clients that I see, want to interview 10 candidates before they make the right decision. There's no such thing as the perfect hire. Let's be realistic. Every candidate will not have everything that you want in the role. And a lot of times I find by the time they're interviewing these 10 candidates, the good ones are being snapped up by other companies. So you could lose candidates while you're continuing to interview because you're just not finding everything in one candidate. So be cognitive of that when you're interviewing as well. So quiet quitting, it's a new term that we've been introduced to, and we thought we'd touch on it you know, in our webinar today. What is quiet quitting? What does it mean? It's got nothing to do with quitting your job, really. It's just basically doing only what the job requires. So just working within the parameters of the job, not taking on anything additional, not working extra hours, not volunteering to help in any way. We're finding a lot of candidates like this. So be careful that you are engaging with your candidates and they are not quitting quietly. If you look at this pyramid that shows you the reasons, it basically tells you that people want to engage, they want to be engaged with, they want to feel like they belong, they want to feel recognized for their contribution. And most importantly, it's something that we're seeing so often now. People need trust in the employment relationship. These are all the reasons that people are quiet quitting, and something that we need to think about as business owners in terms of our engagement strategy with our employees. I thought that I'd end or I'd finish off with giving you some examples practically of good culture versus bad culture. And again, these are just guidelines in terms of what I've experienced, in terms of what we experience as recruiters, what I've experienced as an HR manager. So I've just put together a few, and again, it's just basically, you know, from my experience. So if you look at good culture, we look at allowing people to work independently, good performance management systems, and then bad culture as the opposite is micromanagement. And I just want to explain a little bit about this. I think that the more you invest in your performance management system, the less you have to micromanage your staff. So I would, as a business owner or anyone managing people, I would invest in a good performance management system, making sure that you have proper KPIs for your team or for your employees, and making sure that you manage them based on that. If I use myself as an example, again, I manage a team of recruiters, but I also do recruitment. I also have my own key clients because that's my ultimate passion. And I don't have the time to micromanage our team, but we've got a very good performance management process in place. So I don't have to go to them and check what are they doing in a day, how far have you gone, because the system tells me everything. So I would investigate this, because this in many ways can change the culture in a company. Flexibility versus rigid working hours. something we've had to adapt to as a company. We had straightforward working hours, and we realized that people need flexibility. And I found that from offering this to our staff, they're happier and they actually give a lot more. So I think that companies should definitely not be rigid about working hours, because people will give more if you give a little bit to them. Rewards for good performance versus no recognition. So at Pro Talent, we make a big thing of rewarding our top performers. There's I know it's silly, but people love that. There's a trophy, there's a floating trophy that goes around to the top biller for every month. There's champagne, and we celebrate, and we very, very celebratory of all our success. And I think that rewards for good performance just fuels people to perform better, versus no recognition when they put in a lot of work. And some environments are sales environments, some are finance, whatever the environment is. I think that you can be creative about rewards for good performance. Community involvement. So we're also finding that a lot of people are looking for purpose now, and will look for a company that's got community involvement, so that they feel better, feel more fulfilled. It improves the staff morale. Like we do the Robin Hood Foundation, the Sami Army, we've done that a few times, and I promise you, it just boosts you up. It just makes you feel better when you know that you are contributing to your community. Good facilities, infrastructure, and equipment. A lot of the time when we ask a candidate, what is your reason for wanting to leave? They would say the company doesn't use good systems. There's no processes. The facilities are poor. We have outdated equipment. These are things that you need to look at, because first and foremost, they inhibit the person's ability to do the job. And like Cindy Norcott's she's very creative. We've got a popcorn machine. We've got a NutriBullet. She's constantly looking for ways and for things that she feels the staff will value. So, there's a lot of things that we do to make sure that our staff have everything they need in order to perform, and a little bit more just to make them feel comfortable in the environment that we are in. Support and solution driven versus a punishment, blame, judgment sort of culture. Are we training our managers? Are we training our supervisors that have moved up the ranks because they were good performers and now are having to manage people? Do we need to retrain them? Do we need to train them on having proper people skills, conflict resolution, managing their staff better, being more motivational? For me, because I sit in the seat of a recruiter and I'm managing my team, it's easier for me because I can identify what some of the issues that they have and offer them good advice. But if I wasn't doing that, how effective would I be in offering them solutions for some of the problems that they face? So I think we need to look at, if your management team does not have sufficient training, look at training them on the soft skills that they would need to do the jobs that they do. Staff development and training is an important one, because sometimes we smaller businesses or medium-sized businesses, and there's not a lot of room for growth in the sense that we can't offer people higher positions as such. But we can do some things. We can give them added responsibility. We can offer to pay for their studies if there's something they're interested in studying. We can send them for events and conferences. We have one coming up in Cape Town in March that the company's paid for all of us to attend. We can diversify their roles just to give them better job satisfaction. So what can you do to develop and train your staff? And then there's team building. I think that team building is so important, especially with what people have been through and the isolation they've had to work in for the last few years. So we make an effort to make sure that we do team building, because you learn better to work with your team when you understand them through team building exercises. When you don't do team building and people are expected to work in silos, it also reduces their ability to work together to solve problems because they're not engaging with each other. Our team did something recently. It's the Gallup Strengths Finder, and we found it to be so valuable in identifying what each of us have as strengths. And it actually made us be able to work better with each other and work on each other's strengths and understand why we work the way we do. So I would encourage you, if that's something you can do as a team building initiative for the team, do the Strengths Finder, and everybody, it'll also affirm what you know about yourself and help you to understand yourself better as well. And that would be my advice on recruiting and retaining your top talent. I think at this point, I am confident to hand over to Adrian, who will take over from me. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Rose. Very informative and definitely insightful. I hope people are taking notes as you were speaking. There was a lot of good content there. Grant, how are we doing for time? Are we all good?
Yeah. Look, the topic's very, very interesting. So, yep, we're good.
Okay.
What I need, Rose, if you can just exit your share so we can give it to Adrian. Have you got this screen? You've got it. Okay, great. We're on track. Sorry, I'm not on track. Beautiful.
Okay. So over the next few minutes, I'll be talking about just again touching on a few things that's changed, especially in business. The challenges of hiring top talent. Rose mentioned quite a lot on this already, but I'll just touch on some key points as well. Just some challenges that I've seen and we've seen as recruiters. I'll touch on a little bit of why do candidates leave jobs, and what can we do differently as employers, business owners, HR managers, hiring managers, etc. So yeah, a lot has changed. I mean, corporate business in its essence, probably in the last 100 years. We've seen 3 generations. I know, my grandparents would have grown up differently or worked or been in work situations completely different to how I am now. The same with my parents. But then saying that, what's the next generation looking like? So what are millennials and Gen Z or Gen Z employees now looking? So they are now coming into this working situation or employment sector. What are they looking for? What has been so different from my grandparents to my parents to me, and now them taking the baton and moving forward? And what do we need to do differently for them? How do we understand them and make them work with the business and not have this sort of tension that seems to be happening? So what is different now? Social media, for sure. Over the last 15 years or so, everybody knows everything about everybody else. Everyone knows everything. You can literally go on to Google, find out about a company, within split seconds, know about the people, know about the culture. It's too easy. We can go on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. Find out about our potential employers now, or candidates will do that, right? So we've got to think, what are the applicants, from the applicant's perspective, what are they doing or what are they looking at at us as business owners? So highlights of LinkedIn and Facebook might show one side of business, but candidates know that if they're looking at likes, LinkedIn shares, Facebook shares about other companies, they know that the grass might be greener on the other side. They might look and believe and that there's more money for that company. Competition's higher. So with social media, I think what that's brought is just this greater awareness or more knowledge of what's happening in the UK, what's happening in Australia, what's happening in just in any country for that matter, or any other city in South Africa for that matter, or in any other company. So they get to understand and get to learn very quickly what the competition is like or what other opportunities are out there. So we've got to start thinking about how do we, one, recruit like Rose mentioned, but also how we retain people. But why do candidates, or why do good candidates leave jobs? Perhaps they don't see opportunities for growth within the business, or they haven't been clearly, or there hasn't been a clear outline of their career progression within the business. Maybe there isn't enough skills development. Rose touched on this. Sometimes it's poor leadership, and that can be a tough pill to swallow sometimes, because are we looking at ourselves as employers or business owners or hiring managers and asking the question? I think Rose touched about self-awareness, but are we really asking ourselves the question, what's really going on with my department or my company? Are we portraying the best self, or Are we showcasing ourselves in the right way? Are we leading well? Are we managing well, or are we micromanaging, like Rose also alluded to? There is a sense of being overworked. I think in the last 2.5 years has maybe highlighted that fact as well. People have left jobs because they felt, as much as retrenchments and redundancies and business closures were happening, but also people at the same time were feeling overworked and undervalued. And they had to make some tough calls, and good people have had to leave jobs and look elsewhere. It is mostly money. I mean, we can't hide from that fact. I think it is mostly money, but not always. Here are some of maybe the top 5 priorities that candidates we find or applicants are looking for a job. They'll always ask, first and foremost, if we present them with an opportunity, what's the package? What's the cost to company? Are there benefits? They'll want to know the remuneration or the package structure. Is there a commission? Is there provident fund, medical aid, all sorts? And again, something that COVID has taught us, maybe people didn't have medical aid before, and now they learned lessons. They want to know what, within their affordability, what can they start paying toward, or the company contributing to. Obviously, security is important. For anyone moving to another job, they want to know if that business is established enough, secure, stable. They don't want to step into a business that again might fold in 6 months. So I think as employers, business owners, we've got to give enough information about the business vision, business growth strategy. Where does the business see themselves in the next 3 to 5 years? I think if you paint that picture, obviously within reason, nobody can predict everything, but that's what candidates and applicants are looking for. Certainly flexible working. Rose touched on this. It's not necessarily the hybrid model. It's maybe does the person need to start at 7:30 in the morning? Does the person need to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning? Can you shift the times a little bit? Can you maybe allow them a little bit of flexibility? Maybe they've got to drop kids at school. Can they come in at 8:30 maybe? Or sometimes the adjustment can be made. You can start work at 8:30 but leave at 5. Just that extra half an hour helps people manage their own private lives as well. And obviously great people. I work alongside Rose. Rose mentioned we've got a brilliant team of recruiters, and we work alongside Cindy Knockout, who's an amazing motivational speaker as well. But it's great. It's working with good people, and I think that's an important thing. People leave home to come to work, not to work with people that are going to have tension and awkwardness, etc. They want to interact and spend time for the most part of the day with very good people. Holidays and time off, people have asked that, but again, it hasn't been the top of the priority. But certainly we got to think about how we're offering holidays or time off. I mean, can you time off can be half day every second Friday, which is what we have. So shopping days over Christmas, just allowing people a little bit of room, a little bit of flexibility when it comes to working hours. So what else are they looking for? I mentioned flexibility. I mentioned work-life balance, purpose and sense of meaning. I think if you have a good brand, a company that stands for something, that has purpose and a sense of meaning, and you highlight that fact to your applicants or to people that's coming, or to your team, or people that's newly coming to your business, I think that creates a sense of belonging. That definitely a sense of purpose. It's like, I'm leaving work today because I know I'm going to make a difference in my community, in society, for the greater good of South Africa, etc. They want to know, well, from a Gen Z millennial perspective, they want to know brand recognition. Are you creating within your business? Are you presenting your brand the way it needs to be? Is it highlighting again your sense of meaning or your purpose, or the CSR, CSI outreach that you might be doing alongside that? Within your company, are you offering skills development, training, upskilling? Rose touched on this. I think we can fall short on this sometimes. Employees might feel, stagnant. They would leave because there's, well, I think I get this a lot, no growth opportunities. I think especially within millennials and Gen Z, you've got to always show them or offer them, training or training in a new skill. And with technology, and I look after mainly IT within the business. Within technology, it's rapidly changing. So you've almost always got to be on top of your game in that. Are you offering quality service or products within the business? And are you delivering on that? Are you an integrity driven business? People are looking for that. People want to work with businesses that have a positive impact on society. For sure, leadership is important. So working with a visionary, a big thinker, a person that is forward thinking, is also innovative in their way of working. I think people are looking for that for sure. And then good leaders that develop people. So again, we work with a fantastic team of recruiters within the business, and working alongside Cindy, she allows everyone a bit of freedom to hone in on not just recruitment, but hone in on a particular skill that they have. Each of us brings a certain or different aspect to the business, and that not only adds value to ourselves, adds value to the business, and basically taking the business forward. So I think sometimes employers or business owners might feel too territorial or take too much of the ownership in saying that only I can add value, or only I can dictate innovation. Whereas somebody in your team or your new hire might be that person who brings in this new tech, or brings in this new system or process that changes the dynamic of business. And that just takes the business to another level. So I think let's not be short-sighted when hiring people or looking for people that can add those incremental values, I guess. So I'm going to quickly talk about processes, and again, to the detriment of some of our clients, the way hiring or recruiting process has been to the detriment. It has been to their negative. It hasn't worked well. In other words, Rose mentioned that is the hiring process so long and daunting and just arduous for the candidate and onerous sometimes, where they lose interest, or they've been looking at other opportunities and taken another offer elsewhere because your process hasn't been clearly outlined, or your process isn't streamlined or quick as well. So candidates do want to know that you're taking the process seriously. I think when an applicant sends their CV, or you initially engage with a candidate, tell them what's in store. Tell them, all right, this is going to be the first interview. There's going to be a second interview. There's going to be a technical assessment. Have them or prepare them for that, instead of just interviewing and then waiting and then possibly setting up a second interview, possibly setting up a technical interview, possibly sending out an assessment. I think we've got to be clear in our recruitment process. So also be creative and innovative in the process. You want to engage with the applicant, the candidate, and build that foundation of trust and respect. They are giving you your time. So I think we've got to honor that. We've got to respect that as well. That some people are using their leave to take time off to go for interviews. So we've got to think from their perspective. So it's important to be creative in your hiring and recruiting process, and I'll touch on that in a second. So how can we make sure we're attracting the best? What is your company's reputation like? So social media, I touched on before, and your branding and brand awareness. What's your brand management strategy? Are you highlighting, how good your business is, how good your product is, how good your service is? Are you highlighting the value of your people that you're bringing to the table? what is basically your offer to the candidate? Are you using these social media and online platforms? There are places like Glassdoor where employees can rate or review their previous or current employers. So be on the lookout for things like that. You know, people can easily do research in your business and either find positive or negative reviews on you. So create that employer brand, both internally and externally. It's not just you know, showing pictures on Facebook, but what are your own people saying about you? You know, at a BRI, is your team going to be selling the product, selling the service, selling the company? You want the people in your business to be brand ambassadors, not just people who do a job or tick a box in a work job description. There's a lot of choice out there. Candidates are definitely spoiled for choice. There's a lot of competition, and it's not just competition in the sense that there are other businesses or other companies. I'm also saying that recruiters and recruitment agencies are out there always looking for top talent for their clients. So how you retain your staff is critical. So making sure that they are continually engaged. So bottom line is build your brand awareness early on in your recruitment process, and think long term so that your staff and your employees can be brand ambassadors. The other part of the process, I think, is job description. Rose also touched on this, is that it can be, you know, too lengthy. Are you outlining every single detail of their job description? And sometimes job descriptions never stay the same. They're not static anyway. They're dynamic. When a new person comes into the team, they bring a whole set of values and skill sets. So that job description can surely change. So I would suggest don't over elaborate on your job descriptions. You know, put in your key points there, and put in the values that you want to get out of that person, instead of just looking at whether they can tick a box. 89% of interviews don't read the full job description. That's a stat that I made up. So I would say tone down the corporate jargon on your job description. Stick to the behaviors, like I mentioned, and make it an engaging lead with those unique qualities that you're looking for. So, you know, focus on the traits of a person, the values of the person, their passions. What is your ideal candidate in terms of the value that you want to bring in to the company? Another recruitment strategy we advise our clients is don't stop when you're hungry. So don't just send us a job description when somebody's left the company and say we need somebody to start yesterday. We've got to create a talent network, a pool, a talent database. You've got to start doing this within your own business. Create your own talent pipeline. Start thinking long term instead of looking at or I think I might be removing myself from the process, but don't just rely on the recruiter or recruitment agencies to build their own talent pool. You can do this yourself. You can look at your candidates, so past applicants. Maybe there's somebody that was maybe underskilled 2 years ago that you could look at now. It's probably more skilled. But the point to that is have your own pipeline. Don't put yourself in a position where you need somebody next week because your best talent has left. Always make sure that you have a database that you can always refer to. We provide that. We've got a very good database in-house as well. So more than happy to share that with you. Do you have a succession plan in your company? Do you know what's going to happen when your top salesman is going to leave? Do you know what's going to happen when your finance manager leaves? The amount of IP sometimes I've found is that, you know, that leaves the company when a finance manager, for example, leaves, who's been with the company for 15 years, and they've left with all of this wealth and knowledge about the business itself, the systems, the processes, the technology, all of the nitty-gritty, the payroll stuff. And now the business owner is like, my second in command, my 2 IC is leaving, I haven't even had a succession plan put in place, and I'm stuck. So make sure that you have succession plans for your key players or key leaders within your business. Your hiring approach, like I mentioned, it's got to be efficient and impressive. People are looking at that. Yeah, it is a candidate-driven market we're finding now. Employees have got to be engaging. They've got to be innovative, like I mentioned, but not just from a business owner perspective or a company reflection or company branding perspective. I think it's hiring managers itself. Are they equipped to even interview smartly? Are they equipped with the tools? Are they given training to do structured behavioral interviewing questions like Rose mentioned? Is there skills assessments that you could apply or use when a new candidate or applicant is coming in? So I think empowering managers or hiring managers to be good leaders, to be coaches of people. You know, there's another stat, or there's another saying that people don't leave company, they leave bad managers. So I think if your managers are empowered and mentored and trained and coached in the right way, they become good leaders, and people don't leave because of that. You know, they will want to continue, they will want to stay with the business because their manager treats them well. So I think, and that becomes referrals. So I've experienced this as well. So where specifically IT, an IT client of mine, the manager would have left, and the first line and second line engineers would have left with him, or they would have just followed suit because they were too scared. What's going to happen when another manager comes in and shakes the whole dynamic? It was a good leader leaving, and all of the good staff in terms of engineers were left with him as well. So it's about creating the right environment, creating the right people within your organization, and having a sense of you know, the same tone of voice within your business, and creating that culture. I think we use that. It's used very loosely. We bandy that about sometimes. You know, what's your company culture? But it's your company culture is your people. People bring in their culture, their values, their skills, and that creates your culture. It's not for lack of a better word, a dictatorship where you're saying, this is how we run our business and this is how it's going to be. It's I would turn that around and say, this is our business. What can you bring? What value can you bring to the culture? What is your background? What is your skill set? What is your previous experience that you can bring in to change the dynamic of the business? What's your candidate interview experience like? And this is something that's come up as well. You know, I mentioned, is it onerous? Is it arduous? Is it too lengthy? Is it going on for a long time? I think a lot of that can be shaken up. Your interview experience doesn't necessarily need to be in a boardroom. It can be over a coffee at Mug and Bean. It can be offsite. It can be during your team building. So that applicant comes in during your team building exercise, and they get to see what the team is like, you know, two, what the manager is like, and just that whole dynamic. They get to experience something completely different. I know that's maybe a little bit out there, but I think we're at a stage now, post-COVID, where we have to start thinking differently. You know, you want people to go and come in for an interview and say, or at least have that interview experience, and then walk out later on saying, I'm not going to go for another interview ever again. This is the company that I want to work for. I'm not going to even look. I'm not even going to consider any other job opportunities, because that's the business I want to align myself with. You want to create that environment where I think there's a realness as well. Too often what happens in boardroom setting interviews, it becomes too static. You ask a question, you get an answer. I think you get different responses when you ask value-based questions. When you ask, like Rose mentioned, behavioral type questions, or, you know, what was their team like before? What was their team dynamic? How they fit in? Start asking questions about their background, family, you know, things that might even affect the role of the business or the company. Look out for red flags, like Rose also mentioned. I think the other point that we might fall short in during the interview process is not describing to the candidate what success looks like in that role. Too often we, while interviewing, will again ask questions, get a response, but not detailing to the candidate saying, this is how you can win. This is how you can really do well or shine within this team. And this is what success might look like. So describing to them how they will win or the team will win through them. I think we forget as recruiters, hiring managers, business owners, that we are presenting to candidates as well. I mentioned just now that it is a candidate-driven market, and we forget that, I think we focus too much on, okay, candidate, step into the boardroom, you present to us who you are, what you're about, what you've done, what your experience is. Whereas it can be balanced by you also as a business owner or hiring manager presenting to those candidates in terms of what your business does, what your values are, what the wins, successes, achievements were, and your projections, for the next 3 to 5 years. Just give them a sense of, give them a sort of a visionary thinking interview. We found that 1 out of 3 new hires will leave their job within 6 months. It is a scary stat. We're also experiencing it, but it is definitely something to think about. So I think if that's the case, if 1 out of 3 people are leaving their jobs in the first 3 months, are we doing enough? Are we doing enough in that 6 months? So we'll spend hours, days, weeks, months, sometimes looking for the right candidate. Putting a job description together, posting an ad, engaging with hiring or recruiters or agencies. We'll invest all of that in the hiring process, found the right person, but take our foot off the pedal when it comes to them starting. So if you've made an offer to somebody and they signed the job offer, what do you do next? Do you wait a whole month before engaging with that new hire? Do you just leave them be while they're working out their notice period, and then hope for the best on the 1st of December that they'll come in happy and engaged and presenting their best selves? I think, and Rose will agree, onboarding and employee engagement starts from the moment they put pen to paper. So the moment they've signed that job offer and now working out their notice period, you've got to stay engaged. From that time, you've got to stay in touch throughout the process. Can you set up coffee meetings with yourself or maybe members of the team during the notice period? Are you touching base? Are you checking in with them? Are you setting up Zoom meetings if they're too far away, for example? I think engagement with that applicant or candidate is really, really key during that notice period. Again, Rose and I were discussing some points yesterday, and some of the things were like, as basic as, or some of the things that candidates will experience in their notice period is, so they've handed in resignation, and now their manager or their boss or the team is going, oh, well, why are you leaving? You've been here for so long. You're the best at what you do. We're going to lose you. That next person's got big shoes to fill. Now, if they're getting bombarded with these affirmations and praises all the time within their notice period, don't you think they're going to feel less thrilled to start on 1st of December, 1st of January? Isn't that going to change their mind or start, getting their wheels turning? We've got to think, what if that employer doesn't find their replacement and then counter offers? That's happened as well. So during notice period, I think you've got to maintain that engagement. You've got to maintain that touch point. It's very, very key. Again, after signed offers, you've got to plan their probation period with them as well. You've got to describe to them what their first 30 days is looking like, what the 60 days is looking like, what the next 3 months is looking like. It's happened to us where candidates have even left during their notice periods, during their probationary periods. And I think it falls down to us as business owners, employers, hiring managers, not doing enough to set the expectation and being clear enough on the onset. So why is it that important? I mean, clearly on these stats, 14% within your team will be actively disengaged. And what does that mean? They just disengage. They will, promote disharmony. They will be adding to any toxic environment if they're creating that. 55% of your team might be just not engaged, just not committed enough. They'll have higher absenteeism records. They're more likely to take leave more often. But and there's only 31% of your team that might be engaged. Those are the loyal, committed, the high productive performers, and that's your retained. That's who you need to retain. So really and truly, we're retaining, or you've got to start increasing or considering or thinking about ways to increase that percentage from 31% to above 80%. How do you do that? How do you make sure that everybody is in the same boat and driving that boat, not just turning their backs away and not moving forward? So you've got to start with why. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and I think from business owners, employers, hiring managers perspective, the reason you got to recruit and retain is because you got to do that really well, is because you're looking for the right people that'll not only help you create your company culture, but over and above that, bring their value, their skill set, their experience to help your business grow, help your business advance. And ultimately, it's not, yes, we're in a business for profit, but I think personally, we're in business to create a greater impact on society. And some more steps just to show you why engagement and or employee engagement and retention is so important. Is for sure, it increases employee performance by 40%. It increases customer satisfaction. Happy employees means happy customers. And then for sure, your financial success within your business will quadruple, if any. So those are some interesting stats, and I hope that maybe you took notes while that was going on. But we're more than happy to share the slides and just some of that information. One of the things that we partner with as a recruitment agency is behavioral assessments, and we're offering this freely to you, those listening, those watching. Contact us, Rose and I. We're more than happy to connect you with our partner who delivers behavioral assessments, values-based assessments, emotional intelligence-based assessments. And I think these are key. These will help you make the right hire, but not only make the right hire, retain your staff. And I think that's really important. I'm going to hand over to Rose because we've got an interesting prize draw. Rose.
Okay, Grant, are you happy for us to do the prize giving now, or do you want to do Q&A first?
I'm just going to, I've been watching the Q&A side of things, and because your presentation has been so comprehensive, you've had very little questions coming through. So what I'd recommend is, because timers are not on our side, why don't we do the draw now?
Okay.
And then we can take it after that.
Okay. So for the draw, we are going to be giving away 2 unbelievable books. To be honest, Adrian will bear witness that I'm not sure if he's read the How Does She Do It book, but the other one that's called How to Be Unstoppable and to Achieve More in Business and Life. For me personally, these 2 books have been an absolute inspiration to me. And my book, like this at home, has got thumb notes and underlining and highlighting, because I like to go back to it like at least once a year and just look at how I can have a better strategy for what I do on a daily basis. So these are the 2 books that Cindy has written. This was the first one, and the second one is How Does She Do It? And again, Grant, even men can read it. It's just practical, that practical. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be drawing names on my randomizer, and then whoever's name is drawn can get in touch with Top Business, and we'll get the details from Top Business, and we will courier to the person. I'm just gonna get the name. Just one second for me. Okay, so the first name that was drawn was Nomonde Kaluza. I see Nomonde is on the chat, or is on the call. Nomonde, if you can just send your details through, we'd be happy to courier the book to you. And the one that you'll be getting is How Does She Do It? Okay, so congratulations to you. And then I've got second name drawn is Ruvesh Remdat. Ruvesh, as well, you as well, if you can get in touch with Grant, the book How to Be Unstoppable will be couriered to you. Thank you very much, Grant.
All right, great. All right, you're going to give me my screen back, eh? There we go. So I'm just going to get a different gallery up here. Okay, brilliant. So I reckon that is the most comprehensive breakdown that I've ever heard. So well done. You've obviously done this very, very often, haven't you?
On a daily basis, pretty much. But no, just in terms of the content, we've done this. We've put it together, or like over time. There's been a couple of that sort of mixed matches, and we've sort of brought this all together in a recruit and retain talk.
Yeah. So what is going to happen is that this has basically been broadcast on YouTube, so it is available to everybody as a reference point. So what we're talking about now, chaps at home, you can go back. It's on YouTube on the KZN Top Business channel, and you can watch it at any point. And as a reference point, I mean, I started making notes. I ran out of pages because it's like being an incredible lecture. And for the folks in that position who need to do what you chaps do, I mean, if you're looking at two gurus, that's what we've got. But I'm going to ask an important question, because what's happened in the world that we have is digitization comes into it all the time. What happens now is people take responsibility of hiring when maybe they shouldn't. And you've got that stat of 1 out of 3. I'm sure that's a lot higher if you take people like myself who go out there and hire somebody who haven't got a clue, although we might think we do, and we become very clever because we've got Google and LinkedIn and all these incredible things. Surely what you do, the role you play, maybe you can just elaborate on that, because I think it's damn important that people understand there's a role in what you play.
Adrian, you can take that one.
Yeah, so one out of 3. I'm pretty sure it's higher than that. 1 out of 3 people will leave their jobs or leave their jobs in 6 months. I think from our perspective, what we're finding is we've got to educate, we've got to advise our clients. We've got to let them know that this is the reality of the situation, and it's not only, well, the reality of the situation is that competition is high, and it's a candidate market. And the reason competition is high is post-pandemic, post-COVID, a lot's changed. The world's shrunk even more. I mean, we were living in a global village. You mentioned digitization, but I mean, we're using Zoom now. 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we wouldn't have done this. We wouldn't have thought to do this, but it's been doing. You could be sitting in Singapore, for all I know, Grant, and Rose could be in Australia, and we could be doing the same thing, and it's effective. So I'm saying that because that's what's happening with the competition. So candidates are now being approached, and they're seeing it. I mentioned this about social media, LinkedIn, Facebook. They're seeing other people find those jobs, find those opportunities, getting to travel, getting flexible hours, etc. In terms of remote working as well. And they're like, wait, how did they get that? And now we're losing talent to overseas companies, which is not a bad thing, because it's creating exposure. So we're winning in a sense, but we're also losing good talent in our country. So like if talent is working for UK, US, Australia, and they're looking for talent, they're not necessarily, the cream of the crop is what they're after. Where does it leave us? How competitive are we making ourselves to be? Are we using the right type of tech? Are we being innovative enough? Are we being creative enough to make our brand stand out and be competitive to the Western world, if you can call it that? So there is a reality to that, and it's that number of 1 out of 3 is increasing a lot. It has a lot to do with that overseas market tapping into South Africa, and that's like I said, it's not a bad thing. It's absolutely a good thing. We're getting international exposure, and they're seeing South Africa for the true talent and potential that it has. But I think internally, our businesses, KZN, South Africa, we can do a lot more. We can definitely do a lot more.
I definitely agree with that. I think that, Grant, it starts from the beginning of the process in any way, where, like Adrian mentioned, your engagement with the candidate from the beginning of the process to the time they finish their probationary period is the make or break. How you've interviewed them, the time you've taken to prepare for that interview. I mean, we're seeing this all the time. Like, we talk about it on a daily basis, where our clients are not equipped to interview well. So they make the wrong hiring decision, and that impacts the company, it impacts the candidate. Eventually, like I've had recently a candidate, she's excellent at what she does, but they hired her for something totally different and she didn't work out. She's left without a job. They left without the right person. It's just a horrible situation. So I think equipping our hiring managers to hire well, to interview well, to make sure they get to know the candidate well is critical. And, Cindy uses an analogy that we always laugh about. She says that recruitment is not like speed dating or Tinder profiles where you can just swipe right or whatever the case may be. You've got to make sure that you take the time that the process needs to make the right decision, because people can make or break your organization. And we've seen, Adrian will tell you, hire the wrong person and watch how they can dismantle your organization one brick at a time just because they are totally wrong for your business, intentionally or unintentionally. So getting to know the person that's coming into your business starts from day one of interview, through to engagement during the notice period, through to their probationary period, where you're managing them, especially if they're not performing or they can't do what they say they can do. Like when we get a sales position, sometimes in the office we cringe, because salespeople, they're the best at selling themselves, but often to try and find who are effective and who aren't is the problem. So I think that we also need to understand people can be very good at selling themselves, but asking them practical examples of proof of what they've done in terms of pay slips, commission statements, schedules of earning commission, or whatever the case may be, becomes absolutely critical in validating what the candidate is telling you also.
Okay. So I think in summary, what I got out there, our biggest export out of South Africa is our talent, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So we've got to stop that.
100%.
We do have a reversal of that. As you said earlier, is that overseas companies are sourcing us to work remotely there. So our biggest export, and everybody's been saying it for a while, is it's our people. And the other question you did answer, even though it was a roundabout way, is that yes, technology is out there. Yes, use it to whatever you can. But at the end of the day, if you want to do it correctly, still talk to the people who count. And it's what we do in business, particularly here in KZN. We do it very well. We collaborate.
Yes.
We're not in competition with each other, even though we do the same thing. And that's why we're unique in what we do.
Yeah.
So Rose and Adrian, thank you very, very much for joining me on KZN Top Business MasterClass. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And you got anything to say in just before we sign off, Rose?
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate, I think, Rose, I don't want to speak for Rose, but for sure, we both don't take the opportunity lightly. Speaking with your network and speaking with the people that's watching and listening, we want to help as best we can. So, and as much as we can, talks like this, webinars like this, we're more than happy to get involved. And what it does as well is, create awareness and just in terms of educating and giving that sort of insider info from our perspective. We get to see both sides, really. We get to see candidates, applicants, not engaged, disengaged, whatever the case may be, and then on the flip side, dealing with our clients, and we're like, come on, we need to be this bridge. We need to build a better bridge. So we get to see a lot, and wherever we can to share those insights and information and insider information, I guess, is we're more than happy to do that. So thank you again for the opportunity for this, and yeah, it was good. It was good to chat.
Likewise. Rose?
I think from my side, in many ways, we are the middleman. We connect talent to companies and companies to talented people. And that can have its advantages and disadvantages, Grant, if you can imagine, because we constantly have to prepare our candidates, and we also have to teach our clients, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. We've made a mistake here in terms of how the process went. How can we do it better going forward? And also to educate our candidates on salaries and how they must conduct themselves in an interview, how they must prepare in an interview, how better they can format their CVs. And, we found that we sit with all of this information and all of this knowledge in our organization. And what better way to impart this knowledge, than to do the webinars or the talks that we do. So I'm happy for anyone to contact us if they need any further information on anything we've shared today. Again, it's all from our own experiences and what we see on a daily basis. It's not all right or wrong or whatever the case may be. It's just this is what we're seeing, and we'd like to impart this knowledge so that business owners can be very equipped to make the best decisions for their company. So it's really been a privilege. Thank you for the opportunity, and we hope that we've added some value to everyone that would be listening now and when it goes live or whenever they're listening to the recording as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Rose, Adrian, you put the wire back into recruitment, isn't it? You and Simon. Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining me on KZN Top Business Masterclass, and until the next time, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Grant.